they're going to morph and change like over time, and you're going to have to deal with them in a different way. And as coaches, we focus so much on becoming better coaches, learning more about fencing, like technique, different responses to tactical situations. And I think the most important thing, the thing that actually makes one person win or one person lose, kind of gets missed. So I'm just going to kind of talk about that. And that is probably the primary job of the coach, is to develop your students' psychology, right? Like they're going to view the world of fencing through this lens that you give them, right? They're going to react to situations how, like whether you're conscious of it or not, the kind of environment you create in your class or in your club or in your lesson, that kind of energy is going to be brought to the strip. Right? Every kid is a little different, right? So having that ability to kind of like know what each kid needs to hear or each kid needs is something that you'll get better at, but you always be mindful that you are shaping their psychology, whether you know it or you don't. Okay? And that is probably the reason why somebody loses or wins, not necessarily because they do a move really well. Like it's probably, maybe you guys have a similar experience. You have a kid who is amazing, he can do anything he wants in the lesson. It's like perfect. It's like exactly how you imagine. They get to the competition and they wet the bed. They're like terrible, right? They're not prepared to compete, right? I would strongly encourage everyone, any exercise that you're doing in the club, like try to turn it into some type of a game or a competition. What tends to happen, kids are small human beings, like they're a little bit afraid to fail. So exposing them to competitive environments like all the time kind of like desensitizes them to this whole idea of competition. And it also teaches them that when they fail, they lose, that nothing bad happens. Like life didn't change, like it's the same thing. We have our technical skills and our tactical skills that we focus a lot on. But I feel like I had pretty good tactical understanding, like not the best technique in the world, but I would, as a fencer, I would go to these World Cup competitions, and I noticed something like right away, the very first time I went. Like when I first started going, it all happened in one day. The top 16 fencers in the world, they didn't fence in the first round, right? They just started fencing in the East. And all the people that were fencing the first round, before the first round started, warming up like crazy. They're like taking a lesson, they're like sweating, get on guard, they do fence all their 5-6 fouls, and then maybe even they have a fence at the eve before they get to fence, before the top 16 guys in the world fence. The top 16 guys in the world, maybe out of them, maybe one guy did anything in terms of warm-up, right? That's communicated to me that these guys know something about fencing that I don't know, right? So, and they're able to get on guard in a confident way. The reason why that is because they're the ones that are like in control of the battle. Like it doesn't matter what the other person does, as long as they're the ones that are controlling the phrases. Meaning that like the movements that they do, the other person has to react to them all the time. Right? So they kind of like they put out this vibe that they're like more confident, or they know something that other people don't. And this is kind of like an invisible battle that happens. And we focus so much on like the final movement or how the person like tricked the other one. And I promise you, 90% of the time, none of that happened. Like when we're watching the video, like this thing that we think happened, and the person did a half step and they did all this stuff, it didn't happen. One person asserts themselves and either touches or they don't touch, or they don't assert themselves. And fencing is a lot of these little like mini battles, these little mini challenges where somebody either commits or they don't. Okay? And that's what I came to realize, or at least I believe, that those guys that are the best fencers in the world know. It's not going to help them to get their body warm. It's not going to help them to touch a bunch of times. The bout's going to be won and lost on like how much commitment they bring to their movements. The bridge between your kid being like super confident and being like technically like being able to succeed with their technique is about 2 words, and I think fencing boils down to these 2 words. Like, and I think for all 3 weapons, and that is commitment and precision, right? It takes a really, really, really long time for your kids to develop the kind of precision that you want them to have eventually. But the commitment part, that they take their chances, or they're the ones that are like creating situations, they're making situations happen. That can happen like right away. And if more youth programs were oriented towards that happening, then I feel like in a very short amount of time, you'll start to see like the kinds of things that you want to see out there. Like many of us have experience where like maybe somebody's really good at attacking, but they get to the competition, they're just afraid to pull the trigger. Like, so the reason why they're afraid to pull the trigger is because they're afraid of failing. So competition is something that they need to be exposed to in the club. And I would not send a kid to a competition very often. It's the kind of like in vogue now to send a lot of kids to competition after competition after competition. You're developing their psychology, right? So your number 1 goal is to get them to like fencing and to buy in, to be in it long enough to develop the skills that you want them to have someday. These skills take a long time. So what you want to do with youth competition, I think, is don't even speak of it. Get them excited about fencing, get them to be feeling like they understand what's going on. When they approach you about competition, or usually it's a parent will approach you, you're like, all right, let's go to a competition. You go to a competition, you cross your fingers if the kid does well. He does well, great. He's like in. He's a fencer. Like he identifies himself as a fencer. No reason to go to another one. Right? Just stay the course, have him keep, he likes fencing now, have him keep training, developing the skills you want him to have. If he does badly, which is mostly what happens, very important not to go to another one for a while. Because this kid needs to believe that something has changed between when he went there and laid an egg and the next one. And if that's only 3 weeks or a month, probably not enough time unless that kid's coming to the club 5 days a week for him to feel like something's different. So then he's going to go out there and he's probably going to be even more nervous because something bad happened the last time he went out there. And I'm going to go out there now and I know not much has changed. Something bad happens again, and you only have a certain number of times that something bad can happen before that kid loses interest and starts not identifying himself as a fencer. So you have to be really, really careful with exposing kids to actual fencing competition too often or too early. Like my stepdaughter is like one of the veteran youth fencers, and people are baffled that she literally competes like 4 times a year, like not more than that, like ever. And it's been that way for a really, really long time. It's just like a different approach. And even in my own club, so I got parents that drag their kids to tournaments all the time against my encouragement, and they wonder why their kid is never a kid that's fencing at the end. Because when you go to a lot of competitions, you start to develop the psychology that you're just going to do the best that you can. You hope to make it to the next round. Oh, I hope I get points. You want to try to develop kids in your program that believe that they can win the tournament. That they can be the best, right? Because that's like that's the thing that's exciting about fencing, right? For them, nobody wants to be like 32nd place unless they've never been 32nd place before. But you want them going into that competition thinking that they can win it. And if you expose them a lot to competition, they start to go there knowing that they're not going to be able to be somebody that wins the competition. In terms of technique, it's one way to feel super confident or develop this self-confidence with your students is that they have superior technique. Is that they have like really nice footwork. That's one way. Maybe a kid feels really confident because they know that their movements look better or sharper than the other person. Another one, and this is the only way I would expose kids to any type of conditioning, I think that stuff is more for the high-level athlete, is if they can make them feel like an athlete. right? You have them do push-ups, you have them do some sprints and stuff. They start to feel like they're stronger, they're tough, you know? That leads me to another thing. Does anyone, it's a Texas show, seen that show, Friday Night Tights? Has anybody seen that? You've seen it? Friday Night Tights. It's in Texas, right? I don't know exactly where. I think it's like San Antonio kind of area.
Everywhere in Texas.
Well,
it's
football
exactly
is
what
huge
it
here,
is.
right? Like this, like the one thing, I'm stuck in New York like forever. I like it, but the one thing that every once in a while has me thinking about maybe coming back here, and especially after watching the show, is that Texans are pretty freaking tough. They really are, right? You can push them much differently than you can push, like, you know, some kid from Manhattan.
Yeah, but they end up with brain damage. Brain damage. Not a good combination.
But no, I'm not saying you should try to get a football player to be a fencer. But if you ever get a chance, write that down. Watch this TV show. It's a TV show. Basically, it's a youth football in Texas, right? And they're different coaches, they're different teams. Just to get an idea. Not necessarily you have to push a kid to the extent that they do in these videos, but just to get an idea about what a kid is capable of. Like, it's pretty amazing how resilient they really are.
But it's not a place to learn how to coach. Coaching techniques that most of those guys use are some of this borderline.
Oh, you mean how they're coached? Oh yeah, definitely. No, I'm saying it's incredibly abusive. You don't want to be these people, but I'm saying like what your kid can handle in terms of physical exertion and even a certain amount of whatever, tough love, we'll call it. I think as fencing coaches across the board, most of us don't think of our students, we call them athletes, but we don't really think of them as athletes. We're not pushing them the same way that other coaches are pushing their kids in actual athletic like events. So that should probably change. But that's something they can feel themselves getting better at. Right? Part of developing self-confidence is the kid feels that they're improving. Right? That's something that they will improve in rather quickly. Developing coordination, like we do this jump rope thing. You know, there's all different kinds of things they do with a jump rope. Kids, they absolutely love it. They run in there, we have them run through, we have them run in and jump, we have them run in and jump on one leg. I read something a long time ago about, you know, different, how your body's developing, and at a certain age, I guess especially with girls, like your body hasn't decided how its muscle fibers are going to get distributed. Like a certain percentage of them is already set, slow twitch and fast twitch, and there's a whole set that haven't decided yet. And then that at a certain age, it's done. You know, so you know, the big advantage in fencing is to be explosive, to have the ability to go from like 0 to like 100 like quickly, rather than be to retreat or to lunge or whatever. So it got me thinking, like, man, I got to get my kids jumping a lot at a young age, like all the time, and they love it. They're doing all kinds of exercise, and they are having fun while they do it. And then we do a high jump competition where I pull the rope across. They're having to run and jump over this thing. Some kids winning, some kids losing. You're constantly putting competition as part of your practice, part of your practice. So that's really important, okay? But the number one thing is that you actually have to have, like there's a certain kind of energy that you want to have in your room, you know? And most young kids get exposed to way too much information, in my opinion, in terms of like technique and tactics. And as coaches, and I did it too in the beginning, we want our students to understand fencing like we do, you know, and we explain the movement to a point where they don't need to understand it like that. You almost don't want them to understand it like that. You want them to execute this movement at a certain time, a certain moment. That's it. They don't know why it works. It just works. You know, it's this thing I did. That allows them to focus on the more important thing, and that's like being the person that is winning this invisible battle of attention. Right? One person's trying to do something to the other person's trying to do something to them. You want to be winning that battle. You want your student to be thinking that the other person has to worry about what they're going to do, not the other way around. That they need to be worried about what their opponent's going to do to them. Like, they want to assert themselves that way. And that starts in the very, very, very beginning. Like, I'm trying to give you some ideas and some ways that you could talk about this. In the very, very beginning, when they get on their own guard position, right? The very first day, you put them in there, and then you're like, all right, but this is your first opportunity to show the other person you mean business, you know? So you have them like, I call it like putting out the vibe. You know, they gotta stand and be serious. You know, they gotta stand down there and like a certain kind of mindset that they're getting on guard to do bad things to the other person, or they're getting on guard to, you know, they're ready to battle. Like this is a sword fight, you know, and lots of times, you know, it becomes about making the right move. And rarely is your kid gonna make the right move. He's not gonna win or lose because he did the right move. He's gonna win or lose because he came to the strip with the right kind of energy. You know? And you want to try to foster that as much as possible in your program. And yeah, there's gonna be tears. If a kid commits himself like that and, you know, loses or he gets a guard with another kid in the practice, there's gonna be little battles, little fights that happen. That's just part of being a pencil coach. You have to deal with that stuff. You know, you don't want to like have order in the room. You want there to be little scuffles every once in a while. Not necessarily to the point where like fighting, but a little arguing is okay, a little this, a little that. In my experience, the kids that end up being the best are the ones that are a real pain in the butt. They're never doing the things that you want them to do. They have this like strength of character that they know better, you know, and they're not afraid of competition. And you can bring that out a little bit in the kids that are a little shyer. The other thing we do with the lunge, like I'll have them do a lunge, and we don't do a lot of like leader follower stuff, but they lunge like on a signal or something, and they'll do it, and I'll tell them like, it's not a lunge unless you use your voice, right? So, like you have to kind of like break them out of their shell. They have to be comfortable in their own skin when they're in the strip. You want them to be focused outwardly on the other person, what they're going to do to them, not on what's going to happen to them. So the lunge thing is great. Gets them using their voice, especially for your shyer kids. They're not going to do that in a one-on-one setting, but in a group setting they will. And you're always going to have a few kids that are like just like really extroverted and like very ballsy, and like the entire group is going to be fairly close in terms of energy and what kind of competitors they're going to be. And you want to try to steer the group in a direction